Today is March 8, 2024, 1:40 p.m. And we are here at the Center for Sacramento History, located in Sacramento, California. Can you please state your full name and spell it for me?
Richard, Richard, Soto, Soto.
Okay. And your date of birth?
August 19th, 1944.
And where were you born?
I was born in Stockton. I stayed there for 3 days and then went to my permanent place of residence, Tracy.
And please state your marital status.
Single.
Okay. Do you have children?
Yes.
How many?
3.
And do you want to give their names?
My first son is Scott, and he's old. And and then my second son, who passed away a few years ago, is Miguel. And then my daughter is Enriqueta, or Keki.
Okay. And do they live in Tracy too, or?
No. My first son lives in Charleston, South Carolina. My second son lives in Heaven, and my daughter lives in Manteca.
Okay, she's not too far from you.
No.
Yeah. So tell me where you were raised. You said
I was raised in Tracy.
Okay.
My mother and father were married, and in 1947, when I was 3 years old, my father was taking his mother back to Mexicali, Calexico area, and on the grapevine he got hit by a truck and he got killed. And so we went from having a couple of dollars to having no dollars. And so we moved into the housing projects on Southside Tracy, where the Mexicans lived. And that's pretty much where I spent my early years.
Do you have any recollections of your dad? You were pretty young.
Yeah, we just talked about this the other day because I was telling someone that the only thing that I can remember was at the funeral when they were lowering the casket. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Yeah. So both of your parents are from where?
I'm not sure, after my father died, we never saw his family. And so I'm not exactly sure where he's from. I know that he had an extended family in Mexicali and Calexico, because when I was older, I went down there to get to know my tia. And my mother was from Isleta, which is a small community outside of El Paso.
Oh, okay. So pretty around the border, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Folks are from.
Yeah, my grandfather was from Jimenez, Chihuahua. And supposedly he was one of Pancho Villa's Dorados. And my grandmother died when I was in junior high. My grandfather went back to Mexico, and so we never had any contact with him. Mm-hmm. But I remember going to my grandma's house, and there were these 2 big pictures with my grandfather, with his soldado, his caballo, and his 30-30 and everything, So I've always believed that he was a Dorado, although I've never seen his name on the list.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be difficult to track, probably, those names. So Tracy, tell us about what Tracy looks like, in the 40s, and what that experience was like.
Yeah, in the 40s and probably up to the 80s, Tracy was a small farming community. Mm-hmm. The main employers were H.J. Heinz and I want to say Holly Sugar, and then a lot of the packing sheds. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of apricots in the area, a lot of tomatoes in the area, mm-hmm. And in the 50s, 60s, the braceros were there, and all the labor camps around.
Yeah. So what's the racial makeup of Tracy in the 40s and 50s? Mostly Mexican, white?
No, I would say there was a significant Mexican population, and the rest of it was Euro-American. And Mexicans lived on the south side of the tracks because that was another employer. The Southern Pacific had 2 roundhouses in Tracy, and a lot of Mexican worked on the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere late 50s, the railroad moved to Roseville. And so my cousins, the Rangels, they moved to Roseville, and their father, Tony, I think he fell down and something happened to his leg and he died of it.
Mm-hmm.
But my tia Tencha, she lived to be about 100, and she had a big family, and 3 of them I think are police in Roseville.
Mm. Okay, so your mom loses her. She becomes a widow.
Yes.
And does she remarry or?
She remarried about 10 years later.
Wow.
And she married a white guy.
Okay.
And he didn't want to live in the projects with Mexicans. He was in the military, but he was soon to be discharged.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went and found a house on north side. And I remember distinctly that the neighbors accepted him, but they wouldn't accept my mother or us,
Mm-hmm.
the kids.
So you're 13 at the time when this happens, because you said you were 3, and
yeah.
So that must have been a little difficult, or were you excited to have a dad, or how did you feel?
No, I remember because I thought, God, I was mean. He went off to go to work one morning, and I'm at the door, and I go, don't come back. Yeah, it got worse because I eventually ended up being told to leave.
Okay.
And I had a full-time job. I worked for Safeway full-time as a grocery clerk, earning more money than my teachers when I was a freshman in high school.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one good benefit, because he used to play poker with the manager of Safeway, and I'm pretty sure that's how I got the job.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to go back a little bit. So what was the primary language spoken at home when you were a kid? When you were a small kid?
Okay. Between my mother and my father, I don't know. But I think my mother tried to speak to us in Spanish, and I think we refused. And I don't know if it's because we knew she spoke English, so we knew that if we didn't answer, she would tell us in English. But with my grandparents, they didn't speak English. So if we wanted to talk with them, we had to speak Spanish. So my first Spanish teacher was my grandmother. You know, she was the one that was more cariñosa and spent more time with us. And I remember one time she even asked me, like, how did I feel not having a father, and I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. I didn't have a father.
Yeah.
I can't create one.
Yeah. So it sounds like when you started kindergarten, you didn't have Spanish as the first language. You were already
I don't
fluent.
think so.
You don't remember any struggles with language?
No.
Okay.
No, matter of fact, I have my own library.
Yes.
And so people ask me why I started with that. And I tell them, well, my mother always had us reading. She had bought these kind of religious-oriented books. And she would have us sitting on the floor. There were no television in those days. Well, not for us. And we barely had a little tiny radio. And so she would have us read. and I think there were maybe a set of 5, and we would take turns and read all of them to each other, and so really got into reading
at a young age.
Yeah.
And so you're in school in Tracy, and you don't have the language barriers many Mexican kids have at that time. Do you remember like any discrimination or anything like that you faced when you were there?
Yeah, a lot. It was interesting because I went back one time and I told some of the people that we had been discriminated against. Well, they didn't. One of them told me, "What are you talking about, man? There's no discrimination." And I thought about it, and I thought, well, they hadn't moved the north side, and they never questioned the fact that why did we live on the south side? It was just kind of like, if you lived there, it's because everybody lived there. All the Mexicans lived there. And but when we moved to north side, there was a big difference. And I remember one time this white girl had an interest in me, and so I was going to go to her house to see her. And her brothers ran out of the house and were going to beat me up. And the reason that I remember it is because I was in high school, and a year after high school, I went into the military, and a year after that, I was in Vietnam. And her brother, the one who was going to beat me up, got killed in Vietnam. And I was thinking, like, what if I had been the medic that found him?
Mm-hmm.
Would I have taken care of him?
Mm-hmm.
Or would I have told him, sorry, we don't do white boys?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, the irony. The irony that
Yes.
you ended up in Vietnam. Yeah. Did you know that they were coming after you because you were Mexican, or?
Oh yeah, they let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no fucking Mexican is gonna, see our sister.
Mm-hmm.
I should have told him she wanted me.
Right. What other instances do you remember from growing up? The discrimination. I think. Well,
I know. Our neighbor, and they were Portuguese, and I thought, like, shit, man, they just milk cows. What's so good about them? And the lady would never talk to us or be nice. Okay, so years later, I come home and I went to college and I became a counselor, and I went back to Tracy, and my alma mater, and I was a counselor there, and her grandson liked me. I was his counselor, and we got along really great, and he came for me for advice, and we got along really great. And so one day I'm visiting my mother, and he drives up, and his grandmother's on the porch, and instead of going to her, he comes to me and hugs me, and she goes, "What are you doing?" And he says, "This is my counselor, Mr. Soto. He's really cool."
Small world.
Small world.
Okay, so you go to Tracy High. Is that the name of the high school?
Yes.
Okay, and how was that experience? How was high school for you?
Well, I worked
a lot.
Yeah. So I got out of work. I was the only kid who wore a white shirt to school. I went to school. We got out at 2:30. I walked 10 blocks to Safeway and started working at 3 and got off at midnight. And then I ran home because I was always running.
Mm-hmm. And what did you do with your money?
Put it in the bank, and I bought a new 63 Pontiac Grand Am.
Mm-hmm. Were you the only Mexican with a new 63 Pontiac Grand Am?
I was probably the only kid in school that had a brand new.
Anything. All right. So that must have felt good that you were able to buy your own car.
Yeah, but I couldn't go anywhere because I was always working.
Yeah.
And I ran track. Okay, I ran track, and and I was good. And so when I worked for Safeway, I told them I need to have this day and that day off so I can go to tournaments. And they said, okay, but you're going to have to work Sunday. And I go, darn, 2.5. They had, on Sunday you get extra pay. And so I had that extra money coming in from Sunday work. And so, yeah.
So you graduate from high school what year?
1963.
63.
Yeah, when you were born.
Not yet.
Not yet. Uh-oh. And I want to, another discrimination with the track, okay?
Yes.
Everybody knows who the best runners are,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're doing distance. And so the fastest runner is supposed to get the inside lane, okay? And so so I would go to these tournaments, right? And all the judges, and the timekeepers and all that were white. And so I'd go take my position in the first lane. And he says, no, you need to get to the end of the line. I says, but I'm the fastest runner here. He said, don't make no difference. You get to the end of the line. So I looked at him. I said, you know what? I don't care where you put me. I'm going to beat these people anyway. So I went to the end of the line. And then there was one town, after we were done racing, we wanted to get something to drink. They wouldn't let us buy anything.
Mm-hmm. In California?
That was Series. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's important to pinpoint, right? Because I don't think this generation understands what discrimination looked like in the 50s, or even 60s or 70s. But, okay, so you graduated from high school and...
One other thing.
Yes.
In 1962, I was in a real bad car wreck. It killed 4 kids. And that's like Vietnam. That's something that is never, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about that. And it's actually how I got into medicine.
Okay. So where was this accident?
In Livermore.
And you were involved how?
I was a passenger in the back seat.
Mm-hmm. And
there were no safety belts in those days.
And what? How old were you?
17.
Mm-hmm. And so people in the car died in your car?
There were 2 cars.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and this gets even worse. There were a series of hills in Livermore next to Site 300. No, it was Livermore Lab. And kids from all over the area would go, and you'd go real fast because when you started going over them, you could bounce.
Yeah.
So we went, and so we saw this car. And we go, okay, so they're going to go through the hills, so we'll follow them. And so we went to the stop sign, and then we said, well, we're going to give them enough time to get through the hills. So after like 15 minutes, we figured, man, they should be done. So we took off, and we were going over. Well, for some reason unknown, they stopped at the bottom of one of the hills. And so we went over the top and landed on them. And so there were three kids in that car that were killed, and then one in our car. And so the girl sitting in front of me, she died of a broken neck. I had real serious cranial damage. And I always wondered, why didn't I, like have broken skin and stitches and all of that. And like I say, I always think about this. And the girl in front of me had long hair. Her name was Janie Kilgrove. She had long hair. And what I can think is that when we hit, I went forward. And I hit the back of her head with my forehead. And that's what killed her.
Sorry, Richard. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a good side to that. I came back, And one day I'm at a 7-Eleven, and this lady comes up to me and she says, "Are you Richard Soto?" And I'm going, "Okay, what did I do now?" I said, "Yes, I am." She says, "I'm Janie's mother, and I hear you're doing really good things at the high school with kids. You know, keep it up."
Yeah. Why does that make you upset? Because you feel
No,
like
it doesn't make me upset.
yeah, is it like you feel like you are doing your part for your life, that you were spared your life?
I think my life has been spared a number of times. There was another time when I was going to Sac State. I don't know if you remember Steve Arvizu.
Yes.
Okay, so we went I was his administrative assistant. So we went to a conference in Los Angeles, and some of the other Task Force de la Raza people were supposed to find us housing. And so everybody had a place to go but me. So the lady says, "Well, you know, what was I, like 24 now?" She says, "Well, I have a daughter who's like 22, and maybe she'll let you sleep on her couch." I go, "Okay." So I I go to the daughter's house, and she says, "You want to go party?" I go, "Yeah, let's go." So we went to UC Irvine. On the way back, she got a flat tire, and so her mother brought out a spare. So I'm out changing the tire, and I told her, I says, "You guys keep an eye on the traffic, because people are gawkers, you know, and they'll get close to the car." So sure enough, they're gossiping, and I get hit, and I go flying in the air, and a car doing about 80 miles an hour hit me on the side, busted up a whole bunch of stuff, and so I think I was spared that time too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shouldn't have come out of that one.
Yeah.
And then when I was going to Vietnam, my plane crashed in Anchorage, Alaska.
Well, let's get to Vietnam, okay? So let's talk about, you graduate from high school, and then what happens? You said you had like a year break, I think I heard in the beginning.
Yeah, a couple of my friends wanted to get out of town, and they had decided they were going to go in the military, and they didn't have a car, but I had a brand new, and they said, "Give us a ride to Stockton." I said, "Okay." So I took them to Stockton, and they go, "Well, why don't you come in and take the test with us? We'll see who's the smartest one." I go, "I'm not going into Servicemen." I said, I don't need it." "Oh, come on, take the test." So I went in and took the test, and I guess I was a dummy, because I ended up going to the military.
So what happened? They said you passed the test, or what did they do? What did they say?
I actually got the highest. No, John Lavelle got the highest score, but I don't know, man. Next thing I know, I'm signing up for the military. I think it was probably time to move on. I had been kicked out of the house, and
You're how old? 19?
I think I was 20. I think I was 20 around that time.
So you said you got kicked out of the house, and do you not have a good relationship with your mom, or just
No, my mom has always been perfect.
Okay.
You know, she's always been there. It was with my stepfather. You know, I don't know. All the time that we were little, growing up, he would sit in his chair watching TV and never talk to us. Never talked.
So you take this test, you weren't planning on it, and now you're enlisted. What part of the military are you in?
In the Navy?
In the Navy.
In the Navy, right.
Okay. And you said you had siblings, so did you have any like immediate family members or close family members that were in the service or went to Vietnam? No. So you didn't have anything. You said your stepdad was.
Yeah, he had just gotten out of the Army.
So
he was about 10 years younger than my mom. And I think my mother married him for security.
Yeah. Okay, so now take me to what happens. Where do they send you first? Oakland?
No, well, you go to Oakland to get sworn in, and then the next day you fly out, and went to San Diego to boot camp. And boot camp is tough, but like I said, I was a runner. I was always running and doing push-ups and whatever. And to me, it wasn't. It was just another day. But they're always hollering at you. I don't think in boot camp the discrimination I saw was between a white guy and a black guy, and I didn't see like where anybody really identified Mexicans to discriminate against in the military. Now, when I was in Vietnam, that was a different story.
Okay. So you go to boot camp, and then what happens?
Getting ready to graduate, and they asked me, "What do you want to be?" I says, "I want to be home." And they go, "Not an option." So I go, "I don't know." I says, "I don't know. I never gave this any thought." I says, "Can you show me a list of what I can be?" And so they start rolling out all these things, and I saw nurse. And I says, "I want to be a nurse," because I was thinking like that's a good way to pay back. You know, I could always change careers later. So I became a nurse. So a friend of mine, we went into the nursing program together. When we graduated, he went with the Marines. He went FMF, and he was a Marine medic. And I went to Oakland Naval Hospital to work on a geriatric ward, which I hated. Not so much the patients, because I got along okay with the patients, but I was bored. I was bored. And so I told him, I says, "Hey, listen, man," I says, "I got to do something more challenging." I says, let me do surgical. You know, you have to sign up for 2 more years if you want surgical. I says, "No, I don't even like being that in the service now." I says, but give me surgical and send me anywhere you want." And they go, "Okay." So surgical training was a year. And when I got done, they sent me back to San Diego. And within like 6 months, I was going to Vietnam. So the military had put together surgical units, kind of like MASH, and we didn't know each other. We came from different parts of the country, and we all got together in Da Nang, and so I got there early, and I was sleep. They weren't even ready for us. I was sleeping on the airstrip, so every 30 minutes I was hearing a jet take off, and so sometimes now, like when there's jets flying close by, it gives me the shakes or whatever, makes me nervous. And the other one that makes me nervous is helicopters. So we're there, and the first thing we have to do is clean all of our instruments, clean all our medical stuff, and make sure we have everything that we need for. And at that point, we didn't know what we were going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we were aboard a ship, an LPH, which is a helicopter ship, and we would go to Okinawa, pick up Marines, bring them to Vietnam. The helicopters would drop them in a hot zone, and as soon as they got hit, they'd medevac them back to us. And then our job was to stabilize them so that they could go they could be sent somewhere else for long-term treatment. And so we had so many casualties. They were on the floor. They were lined up on the floor, and we would go through and would say, "Okay, this one we can help," so tag them. That one we can't help, so put them over there, let them die. It's you're making those kind of decisions, and
You're a nurse, so is there a doctor there too?
Yeah.
Making those calls?
No, we could make
The calls.
Yeah, we could make some of those calls.
Yeah. And you're what at the time? 22, 23?
22, I think.
So how do you you're a nurse, you went through surgical training, and now you're seeing really the casualties right in front of your eyes.
Oh yeah.
How does a 23-year-old or a 22-year-old, how do they process that?
We started reading the Bible. Okay, we would go into our operating room was about this size, probably a little shorter,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the overhead light, and we would pull it down, and we would sit around the table, the operating room table, and each one of us got his own Bible because we weren't all Catholics, and so we would study the Bible. I think you can rationalize that I didn't do this to these guys. I'm here to help them and save them and do the best that I could. And
Mm-hmm.
when we had casualties coming in, if somebody was in there, whether it was an officer or an enlisted man that was getting in the way, we'd tell them to get the fuck out. People are dying, dude. Get out of here. We don't need you. I once had an interview with at Davis, and I think this lady thought I made it up, but you had to be on step 2, step 3. Okay. You had to just be ready. If step 1 didn't work, what are you going to do next? You had to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no time for it was just all work. I mean, you were saving lives.
So how long were your shifts?
One time we went 4 days and 3 nights nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
So they would come with a glass of water, and you could just wet your lips. That was it. Because you didn't have time to go urinate. They brought a sandwich, you could take a little bite. That was it. And you wonder, man, like how did we stand there for 4 days? Well, you don't think about it. You don't think about it, man. You just got.
Is it like adrenaline?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you just keep going. And even the linen, we had the ship's linen crew, laundry crew, just going. The instruments, we didn't even wrap them anymore. We didn't even dry them. We cleaned them. We put them in the autoclave at high temperature. They got sterilized, pulled them out, poured normal saline on them to cool them off, went to work again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess in those days, probably, I don't know, diseases. I don't know. Are you afraid you yourself are going to get contaminated? Because people are all when a surgeon goes into a room, they're all covered.
Yeah, we had gloves.
Yeah.
We had gloves. We had gowns. We just didn't have extra instruments. We didn't have a central supply room. We didn't have, hey, we ran out of forceps. Send us up no, we didn't have that. So we had to do what we could next, and that was just keep those instruments, clean them, and autoclave them, and go back to work.
So is there a particular patient that stays with you, all these years? Is there a particular experience of being in that room?
We had a young man, and they were all young. We had a young man, and his head was all bandaged with gauze. And I went in there, and they were closing up on another patient. And so I went over and I started taking the gauze off. I thought, I'll just get a Kelly clamp, and clamp off the bleeder. And I'm over there because prior to that, they had put him on a gurney, and they put a metal bucket, and all I could hear was drip, drip, drip. So I'm going like, man, there's an active bleeder. Maybe I can clamp it off, right? So I go over there, and I'm starting to take the gauze off, and the doctor says, leave him alone. I says, but he's bleeding. He goes, that's right, he's going to die. There's nothing we can do for him. He must have got a direct... I never saw the wound because I just put the stuff back on and left him. And so he must have got a direct hit in the head, and if he wasn't brain dead, he was going to eventually die from the bleeding, And that's always bothered me because I don't know if you saw that movie, Driving Chance or Taking Chance. It's where this guy gets shot, and they show how they clean him up and dress him in his uniform, and the hearse is taking him to his home, and people along the road are stopping, turning their lights on, saluting, and it's a real emotional movie, and so I think that unfortunately people think that that's how it is, When I used to talk to the high school kids about Vietnam, I had a body bag and I would throw it out. When I was done, I'd throw it out, and I says, this is how you're going to come home. They're going to throw your naked ass body in that bag, and it's going to be sealed, and nobody's going to be able to open it. Your parents will never see you. So how many parents think that, their kid is shiny teeth and combed hair and, all spiffy, and it's not true, man. They would throw body parts in bags, and, it's...
So having seen so much, I mean, do you have nightmares? Do you remember a lot of that, or have you blocked it off?
The one is that I think I've blocked it out, and the other one is that I keep very busy. I started writing, poems and whatever about my experience, and I think also for a long time I didn't talk about it. When I came home, because I was there early, I was there in '66. Most people I talked to were there after '68, and so I came home early. When I came home, nobody spit on me, nobody booed, nobody, the war had just started for us, and people were still supportive of it, and it wasn't until later when the war got ugly that people started getting spit on and baby killers and with I never got any of that. And when I came home, I had told myself, if I come home, I'm going to college, and no one's going to stop me. And so when I came home, that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. So how long were you in the service for?
A little under 4 years, because I got an early out, only like 3-4 months, so I could start the spring semester.
Okay, and how old are you? Do you remember what year that was?
68.
Oh, 68, yes. And you're how old?
23, 22, 23 probably. I don't know.
Yeah. So you said you're talking about the semester. So where do you go to school?
I went to Delta College. San Joaquin Delta College. Mm-hmm. And I've been very fortunate, I know I've done a lot. So I know that I've probably earned it. But I went to Delta, got involved with the Brown Berets. Even though I was working full-time for Safeway, going to school full-time, raising a baby.
So you got married?
I got married, yeah.
When did you get married?
When I was in the Philippines. My punishment for going all in Vietnam, they sent me to the Philippines, rent a delivery room. So I'm there a couple of months, and I'm thinking like, hey, I don't have an 8-hour shift. Every time they're having a baby, they call me. So I decided I'm going to put in for night duty. So I put in for night duty. There's nobody there. And so at the nurses station, I got my dictionary. I got my books. I started teaching myself what I had missed in high school. Because I said, Soto, if you go back to college, they're going to beat your ass, man. You need to brush up on some stuff. So I started teaching myself. And I had 2 years there. And so I didn't like the idea of going on Liberty with the girls outside base. and so I met this dependent daughter. She was 19.
What's a dependent daughter?
Her father worked for the military.
Oh, okay. And you got married to her there?
She got pregnant.
Uh-huh.
So I thought the caballero thing to do was to get married.
Yeah. So you come home and she goes with you?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start college at Delta?
Yeah.
And you become a Brown Beret. How did you become a Brown Beret?
There were some demonstrations, and I was a couple of years older than the other guys, and I also had an experience that a lot of them didn't, and maybe in certain ways more mature, more confident, and so I was willing to speak up, and so they asked me if I wouldn't go like to the courthouse when they were protesting something, if I wouldn't speak up. I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then when I got there, the Chicana movement had started in 69. And so I was at Delta in 68. And at that time, the group was called Masa. And then the next year, I forgot what his name was. He just died a couple of years ago. The guy from Davis had gone to Santa Barbara when they created Mecha, and when he came back, I guess they were supposed to give the community colleges in the vicinity El Plan de Santa Barbara. So he came over to Delta and he gave me El Plan de Santa Barbara, and I think I'm one of the few people that read it. What?
I'm just laughing because it's true. People didn't read it. It was 169 pages.
Yeah, but I think it has the whole educational plan. So I really started promoting education, and one of the things that we did with Mecha is that I had the Mecha members go back to their high school because the people there knew them already and weren't going to kick them out. And I had them recruit and bring students to Delta College. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you go to Sac State, end up at Sac State.
Yeah. So Arvizu, I don't think Dwayne Campbell was there yet, but they started the Mexican American Education Project. I guess it had already been going on for a couple of years.
It ran from 68 to 73.
Oh, so then I had to be in the first group. But the graduate program, because Jose Montoya went through it, and I think Esteban. So anyway, they called up Delta College. And I had already created all kinds of issues. And they go, do you have any Chicano students there that are really outspoken and agents of change? They go, oh, yeah, we got one. Well, we want to offer him a scholarship. Oh, please take him. Take him. So I went down to Sac State and got an interview and got accepted.
What year was that?
Probably 70.
Mm-hmm. And so there was 2 different programs within the Mexican American Education Project.
Yeah, I went through both of them.
So you were a teacher to become a teacher and then the master's program? I
don't really think I wanted to be a teacher, but I did get in 3 years, I got my BA, my MA, and a secondary teaching credential. And then I became, so I, through the GI Bill, I still had some money left over because I didn't use my GI Bill for the first 2 years. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go for another degree.
Mm-hmm. And did you?
Yeah, I ended up getting not there because they wouldn't let me finish it. But so what happened is that while I was there, the students at Sacramento High School were having riots. And so I went out and I got involved with them. So I worked with Sam Rios' son. And I got involved with these kids. And after working with them for almost 2 years, I decided, you know what? I want to be a counselor. So they wouldn't let me get another degree at Sac State. So I applied to San Francisco. And so I went up to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Are you still married at that time?
No. Did you know Miriam Lozano?
That name sounds familiar.
She was very involved with Ferales, Manuel Ferales, and Joe Sedna.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also involved with, she was, I guess, on the board of the task force with Arvizu and them. And so anyway, she got me into those Rios housing projects.
The what housing projects?
Right down the road.
Oh. Okay, so now you're working what? What's your job now?
Well, I was still going to college.
Mm-hmm.
I was administrative assistant to Arvizu. And so every Friday, I would fly out somewhere because people would come in and they wanted help. And so my job was to go. We had California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Nevada. That was our area. And so I flew out and I would meet with these people and find out what was happening. I'd come back, talk with Esteban. A lot of it was compliance, so federal programs that the district were getting or wanted to get, or students were having riots and they wanted to get, make change. And so I'd come back and then we'd organize a conference. And then myself and then my secretary would, do all the logistics, and getting people their airplane flights and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you mentioned that you were a counselor at your old high school. So when did that happen?
I want to say 76.
Mm-hmm. And you do that for how long?
40 years.
So you retire from there?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And how was
See, one of the things that I believed in very much is that if you're going to make change and you're going to institutionalize that change, you need to stay there. You can't be like just running around building up your resume. You need to stay put.
Why do you think that matters?
Why do I think that matters?
Mm-hmm.
Because people know you. The community gets to know you. I had very, very strong community support.
Yes.
And I'm sure sometimes the district wanted to get rid of me because having worked with the task force, I would tell the district, I said, you need to do this. You guys are not complying with this. Oh, no, we don't have to do it. Okay, I warned you. I'd call up the feds, turn them loose on them. Or the state. Call the state office.
Mm-hmm. So what happens to your life in between Sac State and being a counselor? You remarried?
I remarried, yeah.
And then you had 2 more kids?
Yeah.
And then you're still living in Tracy?
Right.
And then tell me how Stockton plays a part in this.
like I said, I spent a lot of time. Well, all my formative years, and then coming back, and then um, being a counselor, because I also believe that you need to live in the community that you work in, especially as an educator, as a counselor.
Yeah.
And then the professional organizations that you belong to. Lions Club, I was the only professional in Tracy that was not accepted by the Lions Club. Until we got this one principal who was married to a Latina. And of course they invited him because he was white. And he says, no, I'm not going to join you guys unless you take Richard Soto first. So that's how I got into Lions Club. And once I got in, I took my same, work ethics, volunteer ethics, and they liked that.
Yeah. A lot of the folks who have come in to be interviewed as part of this project have talked about learning that they are, in fact, experiencing PTSD and other, you mentioned that whenever you hear a helicopter or a plane that you start to shake. Do you think you've experienced, is that part of your story?
You know Fred Romero? Okay, well, he's from Sacramento. He's a Vietnam veteran, so we were driving somewhere, and he says, I think I says, Fred, do you think I have PTSD? He goes, oh, hell yeah, so you're hella fucked up. I says, thank you for your professional psychological evaluation. But like I don't know if PTSD had anything to do with my marriages, because I'm very committed to social change, and I'm 80 years old and I'm opening up a Chicano museum, library, and archival center.
Yeah.
I should be kicking back with a cigar or something.
Yeah.
So I know I get emotional. I really have not talked about Vietnam, not until recently. About a year ago, I went to Lodi. I did a presentation at Lodi Library. And then a couple of months ago, I did one in Tracy, because this lady said, well, man, you did one in Lodi. Why don't you come to your hometown and do one? Okay. And so I know it bothers me because I get these things and I write. That's what I did. I started writing. And so I write about whatever it is, this bothering me at that time. And I remember, I don't think I watched too many war movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Richard, is there anything that you wish I would have asked about your experience in the service, or is there anything I missed?
The discrimination, you touched a little bit on town,
Yeah.
and I said that later in the military.
Yeah.
So we had these casualties come in, and we got them breathing and walking, but they were non-ambulatory, which meant that they couldn't go to the chow line. So this sergeant comes and he says, okay, and in my unit there were 2 Mexicans. He was one of them, and there was a black. And so he says, okay, he had us all there in the nursing area. He says, okay, we got like about 39 patients, and each one of you needs to go get maybe 3 or 6 plates and bring them back for these guys. Okay. So the white guys go, well, that's nigger and wetback work. I go, what? And so I says, you know what? I says, I'm not going to get all those trays. I'm going to go get my number, and I might even get a few extra, but I'm not going to do all of that. So he tells me, he says, are you disobeying an order? No. Those guys are. No, I'm telling you to go get Trace. No, you're telling me to go get all of them, and I'm telling you I'm not doing that. He said, well, I could court-martial you. And, court-martial in a combat zone means they could shoot you. And I told him, I said, you know what? I'm right. You do whatever you think is right, but I'm not getting all those trays. Well, he backed off. He backed off because he knew I was right. I said, you need to go out there and get those white boys. They had already taken off. I said, you need to go get them and make them get their share. So I think that was like one of the first times where I really stood up and said no. And I think that experience was good because I said no a lot after that.
Yeah. So what do you think it is about you, Richard, that wants to do like social justice type of work?
I think one of the unique experiences that I have, as unfavorable as it was, is when we moved to Northside and really feeling the discrimination. At that time, there were maybe only 4 or 5 Mexican families lived on Northside. And they lived on the far end of Northside, almost in the country. And seeing that and knowing that it's real, and I think that the people that lived on Southside, I think that they were isolated from overt daily discrimination. We went to school. And the thing about sports, the years that I was in high school, the Mexicans, we had all those sports. We were the majority of the athletes on the teams. Yeah. Even our running back, Nick Eddy, was a Mexican, and he went off and played professionally. And so I did. I played football for 2 years, and then until I got that head injury, and then I could have no contact sports. Again, they thought that it was so fragile that I would, if I bumped something, I'd die. But I kept running. I could always run. And I used to tell people I'm Tarahumara. And I didn't know that until last year I did my DNA. I'm Tarahumara. No wonder I can't stop running.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time for this interview.
See, this is my...
Oh, is that your grandkids?
My granddaughters.
Yeah, I love that.